One of the most popular and effective summertime bass fishing presentations is the good old Carolina rig. Doesn't matter if you're ledge fishing in TVA lakes or if you're fishing natural lakes in Minnesota or Wisconsin. Carolina rigs just get it done. However, I never used them. See, a few years ago, a couple of MLF pro buddies of mine turned me on to a better way of Carolina rig fishing. It's a different type of rig. It's so much more versatile and so much easier to set up. Today, we're going to look at what that rig is and why it works so well. Stick around. We're going to talk all about it. But lowbrow, I hear you say. You fish a private pond. You fish a small private lake. You don't have anybody fishing your lake with you. You say that it's pressured, but it's really not pressured. You have it all to yourself every single day because it's private. These people who are out here in their boats, and remember, this is just one of 3 boat ramps for a 640-acre lake. Can you pick out which truck is mine? Let's get the old Arthritis Express mounted and let's get on out of here. Welcome back to Lowbrow Fishing. And you know, the Carolina rig is an effective summertime presentation, the good old ball and chain. I have a lot of buddies who love throwing a Carolina rig this time of year. If you've got some deep water and you don't have a thermocline, Sea Rig can be a great alternative to fishing something like a football jig. And you can also fish them up shallow. Even if you're a bank angler, you can throw a Carolina rig. However, there is a variation on that theme that I was introduced to several years ago by a couple of MLF pro buddies of mine. They showed me this, and it's one of those things. If you know, you know. And once you figure this out, you're not going back to a normal standard Sea Rig, because this is so much easier to work with. It's easier to set up, and it's easier to deal with without having all the troubles that go along with working a Carolina rig. But before we get started, if you like what I'm doing here, subscribe to the channel. We'd love to have you as a member of this community. While you're down there, give this video a like. I would really appreciate it. If you haven't yet, check out my Patreon. There's a link in the description. It's a place where I post videos that I don't post here on YouTube, and I do polls, and we can interact in a more personal level. Check it out. I really think you're going to like it. So what am I talking about? Well, as I said, if you know, you know. I'm talking about this guy right here. This has many names. Baby Carolina, Carolina Light, or more popularly, the Mojo rig. And it is nothing more than a bullet weight. And I've got a bobber stop on either side, a weight stop, weight peg, whatever you want to call it, on either side of a bullet weight. I've got one on the top, one on the bottom. Goes down to my leader. I've got a 3/0 EWG and a Texas rig creature bait or crawl or something along those lines. This is just a regular black blue flake Christie crawl from Yum. That's all there is to it. I don't have to worry about cutting swivels. I don't have to worry about brass weights or beads or any of that stuff. If I want to change the leader length of this setup, it is super, super simple. Watch this. All I have to do, slide that weight down, slide that bobber stop down, boom. I just shortened it. And it works well in many, many different types of conditions. I can make that leader longer. I can slide that weight up by doing that. There, I just made the leader much longer. I don't have to cut. I don't have to retie. I don't have to do any of those things. And I can fish it on a standard bait cast setup like what I have here. This is just a normal, this is 7-3-1. This is my old Abu Garcia Revo. They don't make these anymore. Haven't made them for years. I got on a 7-foot medium heavy rod. I've got 30-pound braid because I'm fishing a lot of slop with it. And I am going to a fluorocarbon leader. If you want to, you can run this on straight floral. If you have areas that you don't have a lot of thick slop, or if you have a lot of timber. You don't want to be using braid around a lot of timber because it has a tendency to saw into that timber and you'll get stuck. That's why it works good in vegetation, because it cuts through the vegetation. But I can use that setup, and I can use it very much like I would a regular Carolina rig. I can drag it along the bottom, and I'm making those same down side sweep motions. I can use it coming up and over. If I've got a lot of hydrilla, I can work it many different ways, the same way that I'm working a normal Carolina rig. And that bait is behaving in exactly the same way. When I move that weight, that bait comes up off of the bottom. I drag it along. When it stops, that bait flutters down and sits there. Now, a couple of things that I have to note is, if you notice, whenever I do mine, I've got the barb taken off of that hook, because you can and you will gut hook fish with this setup. That's why I take that barb off of there. It's just like a regular Carolina rig. You're going to gut hook some fish. So that barb not being on there makes it so much easier to get the hook out without harming those fish. Another thing is, the baits that I'm using are, well, I use a lot of craws and a lot of creature baits. Something like that trusty craw. I'm using something like this Missile Baits D-Bomb. This is great on a sea rig or on a mojo rig. It works exceptionally well. Something like a rage bug, right? Any type of bait that's going to have that wide body, that's going to have some resistance against the water, that's going to flutter down nice and slowly. You think of it almost as a version of like a free rig, but instead of the weight sliding back and forth, you can adjust the length of that leader. So you get the best of both worlds. You get the best of a Carolina rig and the best of a free rig. And it really catches some nice bass for me. I've caught a lot of big bass, even way back when I first started using it, and I was fishing from the bank at the Little Lake. I was catching really nice bass. Now, one of the things that I'm not going to be using on that, if I can help it, is a stick bait, because I want that glide. Now, a stick bait can glide, right? A soft plastic stick bait like a Senko or a Yum Dinger, you might get some glide out of it. But if I'm going to use a plastic worm, a soft plastic worm, I'm using something like this, something that's got some water resistance. This is a homemade worm. This is a open pore mold that I do, and it's got that paddle tail on the bottom, and this has got a real soft tail. It's got a lot of movement, so it just kind of glides down. Something like just a Yum ribbon tail worm, right? Something that's going to have that resistance when it slides down. That curly tail kind of makes it where it doesn't fall through the water like a stick bait does. And of course, you know, obviously a culprit, right? Everybody's going to be fishing a culprit worm. Everybody loves these. They work exceptionally well on that baby Carolina, on that mojo rig. But as I said, from the bank, they are money. They are great types of presentations that you can use, because it's not as heavy as a sea rig and it's a lot easier to set up. There we go, I'm on. Ooh, that's a good one too. Come on. Oh yeah, he went after it. Get up here, you. Well, he got my worm. Oops. I got him right in the top of the mouth, just like you like, but he got my worm. But there you go. That is the mini. There we go. Oops, and I hooked him again. That is the mini or baby Carolina rig. You can see how successful that fish was. Let me make sure I'm actually, there we go. You can see how successful that fish was. He hit it pretty good. He hit it with some gusto. He hit it with some oomph. And you just work it like a regular Carolina rig. This fish is probably just shy of 1 pound, probably about 3/4 pound. But beautiful fish, works great, didn't take long to get it. Very, very simple. You let it cast out there and you let it soak. You drag it along slowly and then you pause it. You want to have time for that bait to glide back down and settle down at the bottom. You're not pulling it, reeling it in, pulling it like you would a jig or like you would a regular Texas rig. But here's the kicker. If I wanted to, I could take that weight And I could slide it all the way down, slide that bobber stop all the way down, and look at that. I've got a Texas rig, right? I can totally get rid of that leader, and I have got a bona fide Texas rig. And I do that from time to time, especially if I'm fishing a lot of heavy slop. You can't do that with a sea rig. I can move that leader all the way down, and I can catch some nice fish using a creature bait. So it gives me that freedom, gives me that ability to adjust up and down, back and forth all day long, depending on the type of water that I'm fishing, depending on the depth of the water that I'm fishing. And when I have it shortened down like that, I can fish it just like I would a normal Texas rig. Obviously, you're going to be fishing something like a crawl or a creature bait. You're going to flip with it. I can flip and pitch with it at that point and catch some nice bass. I've done it many, many times. So if you're not familiar with the Mojo rig, I'm telling you, it's something you definitely need to get familiar with, especially if you're a fan of throwing a Carolina rig during the summer. With the Mojo rig, all you need are 2 bobber stops and a bullet weight and something like a 3/0 EWG or worm hook. That's what I like best. You can use a bigger hook if you want to, but I actually prefer to use a more medium-sized hook because sometimes I'll go to a smaller bait, sometimes I'll go to a bigger bait, and that just allows me not to have to change that hook every single time I want to change whichever soft plastic I'm going to use. Again, it adds to the versatility. And just because you have a smaller hook on there doesn't mean you're going to miss bass, right? You don't have to have a gargantuan 7/0 hook on there, which I've actually seen. I've actually seen people take little bitty worms and put 7/0 hooks on there and then wonder why they don't catch anything. But that aside, I'm telling you, try this out. You're going to like how it works. And once you start working it and you see how versatile it is as opposed to a Carolina rig, you're going to be like me. You're not going to pick up a Carolina rig again because this is just so much easier to throw together. And if you're lazy like me, you like being lazy, you know, the pros use this because it allows them to make more casts. They don't have to stop and adjust the leader length. They don't have to switch things out. They don't have to swap things out constantly. They can just slide that weight up and down. And that's what the pros want. How many times have you seen an actual pro angler out there using a dedicated sea rig? A lot of times you might see somebody, KVD used to do it, sure. But even KVD will switch to that Mojo rig whenever there is a lot of differences between how you want to fish that particular sea rig. If you've got to make the leader shorter, if you've got to make it longer, if you have to adjust things, I'm telling you what, the Mojo rig is perfect for that. So give it a try. I'm telling you, you are really going to like how it works. So there you have it. The baby Carolina, the Carolina Light, the Mojo rig. It has so many names, but if you know, you know. And once you start fishing it, it's going to be hard to go back to a normal Carolina rig. Thanks for watching Lowbrow Fishing. We'll catch you in the next one.